I'm here with Nate Silver, Maria Konnikova, talking about the Risky Business podcast coming up soon. You guys must be getting excited, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
we're poker players. We get like medium excited, I think, about stuff.
It's true. Yeah. Poker players know how to temper their expectations a little better than other people, I guess.
It's true. It's true.
um,
We think
all
we're
right,
getting it
cool.
in good, but you never
You never
quite know
know.
how it's going to go.
Yeah, right. Literally anything can happen. There's 5 community cards to come. Who knows? You might have the best of it now, but who knows? Um, awesome. Uh, do you guys want to maybe just jump in right to telling me a little bit about the format, what kind of things people can expect, um, any exciting guests that might be coming on that you could tease or something like that?
So in terms of format, it's going to be me and Nate mostly, right, Nate? We were talking, we're not quite sure yet what the exact breakdown is going to be because we just want to see what works best and what people respond to the best. But as of now, we're planning for it to be, mostly the two of us talking about things.
Beautiful. I mean that conversation is like anyone wants to be a fly on the wall of that.
Nate, do you want
No,
to say
look,
that any more eloquently than
no, I don't know. I mean, it's not. I feel like it's like not a very eloquent morning, particularly. But no, look, we're good friends. We spent like a lot of time, at poker tournaments or in real life, right? Just kind of reminiscing and like talking about stuff. So it's like we try to like get the vibe between the two of us to be perfect, or not perfect, but like good, right? No,
Mhm.
look, we know a lot of people in the kind of broader poker / gambling space, so I'm sure we will incorporate guests sometimes. But like the focus for now is like kind of getting that the two, because I'm used to like being like a guest on a podcast, but not a co-host, right? Um, Maria has more co-hosting experience, but we're trying to get that vibe right initially first.
Yeah,
Yep.
I guess nailing down the rapport between you guys is probably the most important thing.
Yeah,
Um,
rapport is a term we were
For
looking
and
for.
sure.
More eloquent rapport. We would say rapport, right? But like we couldn't think of that term apparently.
yeah, because I'm an extremely eloquent guy at all times, right? Just
Hey,
gonna throw
I'm
those words
allowed to
around.
not be eloquent. I did not sleep at all because our apartment almost burned down last night, but that's a different
Oh my
story.
What
gosh!
happened?
Wow, I'm glad that you and your apartment are still
Um,
here.
the restaurant that shares a backyard with our building stores, apparently we didn't know this, stores e-bike batteries in a shutout back. And at about 2 a.m., it caught fire. So it went from 0 to like 5 stories high in
Oh my
seconds.
gosh.
And
Whoa.
yeah, we spent the night outside, but thankfully the New York Fire Department is epic and responded in minutes and was able to save our building. Wasn't able to save everything of the restaurant, but we were okay. But it was a scary night, and I did not get any sleep. So that is my excuse for slightly reduced eloquence.
No excuses necessary, really. That's a crazy story, though. Shout out to the NY fire department.
Absolutely.
That's pretty terrifying, actually.
Yeah,
Um,
it was it was flames outside our window
Oh my
and
god.
suddenly in the middle of the
Wow.
night.
wow, that's crazy. That's really scary. Um,
But so
very
I'm very
glad
happy
that.
to be here this morning with you guys, alive and in my office, which still exists.
Yeah, that's really great. We're very glad you're here as well. Nate sort of touched on this earlier. Maria, you have some experience podcasting from the Grift, and
Hmm.
is that was what it's called, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Didn't get that wrong. Um, so yeah, it was just maybe talk about the new challenges or potential,
Yeah.
uh, you know, learning curve that comes with jumping feet first into something new.
Yeah,
For Nate
absolutely.
and Maria, if you can, you have experience.
Hmm. Nate, do you wanna kick us off, and then I can talk about the difference with the grift.
No, look, I think part of it is trying to like find to kind of calibrate things for I really am incoherent today. Sorry. You know, taking like nerdy subjects, including poker, and like finding like the way to like talk to a wider audience without dumbing them down is, I think, the big part of the challenge, basically, right? And we both have like that skill writing wise, I think. I mean, we both take like kind of nerdy subjects and like write about them for like mainstream audiences. But like, getting that vibe right for audio, I think is kind of the big part of the big challenge. Because people are like utterly fascinated by gambling related things and like risk and poker and things like that, right? If you're like at a dinner party, like, oh yeah, I play poker, people are like, oh wow, right? But like, how do you like kind of replicate that once a week for 45 minutes a week, um, in a fair amount of detail where you satisfy both your kind of like geeky audience and your generalist audience? I think is kind of where the challenge is really.
Mm.
Yeah. Nate, I think that was very eloquently explained.
I haven't had
I
coffee yet.
agree.
I'm
Yeah,
not
that
going
was
to,
great.
right? It's like an iced coffee from last night that I'm not sure I'm going to drink
um,
right now. It's a risk.
it is a risk. It's a risk. So how do you calibrate risk? These are the types of groundbreaking topics that we will be covering on Risky Business. Do you want to risk the iced coffee from last night?
I mean,
And actually, in all seriousness, we are. Go ahead.
go ahead, Maria. Yeah, I'm not going to drink it.
I was going to say actually. Okay, you're not going to drink it. Okay, risk reward. Our expected value calculation has concluded, and we are
Has
not
concluded
drinking
it's
iced
not
coffee.
worth it.
Nate, I think that's smart. I think that's smart. But what I was going to say is, in all seriousness, we are going to be doing a balance of topics. So, from everything from politics, obviously, because of Nate and Nate's expertise, and it's an election year, and kind of weighty topics like that, and poker, but also like just silly everyday decisions,
Mm.
like should you drink that coffee? Because the idea is that you can use that decision making framework, right? The risk assessment framework that you learn from the poker table, that you learning from that type of decision making framework from the gambling world, and apply it to decision making in everyday life. Because I think that both Nate and I, the reason that we love poker, um, isn't because we're degen gamblers. At least in my case, I can't speak for Nate, but but is because it's an incredibly powerful tool for thinking about the world and for helping you make better decisions far away from the poker table. And we want to teach that to a broader audience. We want people to appreciate that, to understand that, and to understand kind of the true nature of poker,
Mm.
as this really valuable tool, for just broad decision making. So I think Nate's iced coffee, is a great example, and I'm glad that Nate has come to the correct conclusion and will not be consuming it.
I mean, it had like milk in it. It wasn't like a pure iced coffee, right? Like that's pretty. You don't want to like drink day
Yes.
old milk, right? Under any circumstance, I
Yeah,
don't think.
absolutely, absolutely. No, I was about to say there was probably dairy involved, so
Yeah.
that risk assessment
And
is pretty clear.
do you guys think that poker players inherently are better at things like understanding probabilities, risk management, or do you think that that's more of a learned skill that you got to sit at the poker table for hours to really master?
I mean, look, I think if you know someone plays poker, you kind of automatically have like a fair amount in common with them. Um, like it's the most skill or interest that I'm most likely to get along with someone if like, oh yeah, I play poker. I'm like, okay, yeah, we'll probably get along. Like not for sure, right? But like 60%, which is higher than my baseline, I think. I mean, like definitely in terms of like having like an intuition for probability, right? Like knowing like a 55-50 spot versus 60-40 versus 50-50. That's a very, very unusual skill that poker players have, I think, like quite uniquely. I don't know, maybe options traders or something. The kind of like lived experience, the kind of the almost like
Yeah,
tactile feel for probability is like, I think, like a really valuable skill. Maybe a little bit esoteric, but like for some things,
yeah,
it's like quite valuable. If you like actually like forecast elections,
Mm.
for example, it's like good to like actually have like not intuition, but like to understand like what 60-40 means, right? And to like analogize things to like, oh yeah, I have jacks here against ace queen offsuit, and I kind of I'm gonna lose 43% of the time, right? I feel okay about that, right? That skill I think is like helpful in kind
Right.
of navigating the pitfalls of life.
yeah. I mean, I think that skill is absolutely crucial. I will say that I don't think that it's true that like if you're a poker player, you will necessarily be able to translate this from the poker table to everyday life, because there are lots of people who play poker who don't think about it seriously, right? Who
Mm.
actually approach it with just like, who don't take the game seriously, who aren't studying it, who don't care about the probabilities, who just want to gamble, right? Who don't appreciate the skill elements of the game. And those players, I don't think, are learning much because they don't want to be, right? They're actually treating poker not as poker,
Mm.
but as more like, craps. Let's
Yeah.
gamble and see what happens. Um, and then I also think that it does actually, though, take some skills and some metacognitive awareness to be able to translate it, even if you are good at poker and you do understand it at the poker table, to be able to translate those known kind of those abilities, that probabilistic thinking, which I think is absolutely crucial in everyday life. And Nate, I do agree with you. I actually think it's unique to poker. As someone who studied this in grad school, there's really no way of teaching people probabilistic thinking because there's just no environment where you're correctly sampling probabilities. But poker really does force you to do that. But you still have to have the self-awareness, kind of that metacognition, to take it from the poker table and to apply it to everyday life and to want to do that. And there are some people who are exceptional poker players who are horrible at life and horrible
Mm.
at life decisions. So it's not a perfect overlap. Nate is laughing. I think he knows some of those people, as do I.
Yeah, right.
Look, they're, degens are people we refer to affectionately in poker, right? And like we appreciate their contributions to the game.
We love you.
Yeah.
I know, or maybe I'm wrong on this, but I think both of you have books in the works at the moment, maybe
That's right.
coming
Yeah.
out later this year or down the road. Are
Let me
there?
give a plug to the one that is about to
Oh my
come out.
gosh. Okay,
There
cool.
you
Yeah.
go. Oh my gosh, that looks great.
This is
Yeah.
a
On the
galley.
edge.
This
It's
is not the
about
final
gambling and
version.
risk. So it's very,
I
very
just got it. I
ongoing.
just got it. Yeah, I just got it 2 days ago, and it's already
Looks
been a
brilliant.
great door stopper. Thank you, Nate. Just kidding, but
560 something
it's a big
pages or
one, and
whatever.
I'm
Yeah, it's a big book. But the first half is about gambling, second half is about risk. The first two chapters are about poker, so it's kind of like the lodestar of this whole project, basically. Because I play poker, going
Mm.
back to like, college days and things like that. I actually quit my consulting job. Gosh, I'm old. Like 20 years ago now. Yeah, it's 2024. Shit. 20 years ago now to play like party poker and Poker Stars, Limit Hold'em games online. So it's always kind of been the dream,
yeah,
right? And a big part of my life, and like kind of enabled really like kind of whatever success or failure or notoriety I've had ever since, right? It was like I kind of like quit my job to like go play poker and do other things, but like poker is how I like actually made money for a period of time, 2004 to 2006. You know, Limit Hold'em master, I guess, relative to the time. I like never like properly studied, right? But had some instincts for being an aggressive player and like, and back then it really
Mm.
was like a cliche, but like it really was like so much easier if you were like, I like literally like had like a laminated like chart of like hand strength and things like that they would look at. And like if you like kind of were like halfway conscious, right, then in the poker boom years you could make pretty good, right? Now it's hard, man. Now like even like the old guys, I'm becoming an old guy.
yeah.
Old guys are like, yeah, I was using Munker solver. It's like, fuck you, man. You're supposed to be like the fucking fish, right? But like back then it was like pretty easy.
Oh my God, I unfortunately missed those days. So that was before my time. And it's very funny because everyone's like, "Oh man, you've picked such a bad time to get into poker." I'm like, "I don't know. This is all I know."
Yeah.
Right? Like this
Right.
is my poker experience. So when I started playing, it was already kind of this kind of playing field. Um, but I'm very excited to read Nate's book, which is coming out in August, right, Nate?
August 13th, unlucky
Did I
day,
get
but
that
like hopefully
correct?
lucky for the book. Yeah.
Okay. No, wonderful
August
lucky date,
13th.
August 13th. So I'm really excited about that because I really respect Nate as a player. We actually have, we'll talk about this on Risky Business, but we have
Mm.
a prop bet going into the WSOP about our results. So that'll
Ooh,
be fun. So we'll go into some detail there, but it's
nice.
related to who's going to run better and who's going to run worse.
Okay.
So
I
we'll
that That sounds
Yeah,
super exciting. I'm gonna
yeah,
be
and we're
my
we're we're wagering real money on it, and it'll be fun. And
okay.
people who follow the podcast can follow along with our progress because we'll do, some weekly WSOP check-ins.
Mm,
But the book I'm working on doesn't have a pub date yet because I have not finished it, and it's about cheating, cheating in games.
right.
So you are correct that I'm also working on a book, which will also dive into the poker world because cheating in games, you have to talk about poker. But it's not
Right.
it's not just poker. It's all sorts of games.
Awesome. Cool. And so do you think some ideas, I think Nate, you said that this would there'd be some crossover with the book and the podcast, but do you
Mhm.
guys have plans to incorporate some of those book ideas into episodes and sort of
Oh,
tease out a little
absolutely.
bit of the nuggets?
Yeah, 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 absolutely, absolutely. I think that, and Nate has his. Sorry, Nate, I'm going to be your promotional
Appreciate
agent
it.
right now. But Nate has a Substack, the Silver Bulletin.
Mm-hmm.
I'm launching my own Substack as well to kind of
Mm,
coincide with the launch of the podcast. So there's going to be a lot of cross pollination because this is the sandbox that Nate and I always play in, which is why this podcast seemed like such a natural idea when we first talked
mm,
about it, over a year ago over drinks and dinner
mm.
at a lovely wine bar in New York. When we first considered this idea, it just seemed so natural and almost easy because this is what our brains are constantly thinking about. I mean, my PhD was in psychology, but I studied risky decision making. Right, that was my dissertation. So I've been working on this for a long time, for over a decade, since I started grad school in 2008, and even earlier. And Nate obviously has been playing in the sandbox even longer than I have. So I think
That's cool
that
though. Does it feel like kind of like a full circle moment almost then that uh, this has been a part of your life now for so long, and now the two of you are coming together to sort of launch this new venture. Um, that's yeah, that's pretty great.
For sure, right? Because people like
yeah,
think of me, oh, you're like a politics guy. Like, I'm like, I'm not, right? Like I built an election model because I was like kind of curious about the odds, right? I come from more of a gambling
Mm,
point of view. Um, I guess skin in the game is kind of a cliche that I didn't invent, but like a little bit like that's where I come from, and so like I feel like it's I was I don't know like a rebranding quote unquote, but like it feels more authentic toward who like I really am
mm.
and like what I really like.
For sure, yeah. I guess being branded as something that you don't see yourself as much would be kind of a jarring bit of an experience,
It's a
like an
little weird,
identity
right? You kind
crisis
of
in a
get
way.
like
yeah.
Um,
famous for
yeah,
stuff you feel ambivalent about. I mean, like, look, it's a good problem to have for sure. It's like a privileged problem, but it is a little bit weird, definitely.
mm, yeah, yeah. I could see that being sort of messing with the mind a bit there.
Yeah,
Um,
Nate keeps threatening. He's like, I want to step away from politics. I was like,
Eh,
darling, I love you, but we're about to launch a
I
podcast
know
and the election is
yeah,
coming
we're
up, and
launching stuff in
feel free
like
to step back from politics,
okay.
but not for the next year. Thank you very
yeah,
much.
right. Well, that's actually a good segue. I was going to ask if you guys think there'll be some election discussion in the podcast
Of
itself,
course.
and maybe if you wanted to share your thoughts headed into the election, you can, but feel free to keep them to yourselves or for your own podcast. I don't want to steal
Yeah.
your content.
No, for sure. Look, I'm actually
No, I think
working
we'll
this.
keep most of it for the. Go ahead.
I'm like working on like kind of revising and
Go ahead,
building
Nate.
out the model, the kind of capitalism model, right? Which we'll launch in June. Um, look, I think it's kind of roughly 50-50. Uh, is it 55-45 one way or the other? I want to like actually have like data to actually testify to that, I think. Um, yeah, I've kind of resigned myself to the fact that we're going to have like another close election where you probably be criticized no matter kind of what
Mm,
happens. But look, right now Trump is ahead in the swing states. Um, there is some reason to think that like the quote unquote fundamentals of the election are a little bit more favorable to Biden in principle if you're an incumbent in a good economy. Um, then your favorite to win re-election. They'll have more money to spend. They have more kind of like regular voters. But like right now, Trump's ahead, and people I think, are in a little bit on the left denial about that. So, but we have 6 months to talk about this basically. So, yeah.
Sure. It seems to make a lot of sense for the two of you to join forces in this way. Um, I know you touched on this a little bit earlier, Maria, with the story about you guys having dinner, and that's where this sort of all started. Um, Maybe could you talk a little bit about Pushkin's involvement in the project and where they came in and how that is helpful?
Yeah, sure. So we had this idea, and we think Nate and I are both the types of people who just want to be free to focus on the creative. And so neither one of us particularly has production experience or wants to kind of
Mm,
work on kind of any of the, the back end. So it was never, we never really considered doing this on our own.
mm,
Because we wanted to have just a full support team. So we ended up interviewing a lot of different companies in a lot of different places to see where would be kind of the best fit culturally and where we felt the podcast would thrive
mm,
and would get the support it needed. And I think Pushkin is unique because one of the founders is Malcolm Gladwell, who is a journalist and someone
mhm,
that both Nate and I have also known for a long time. And so, someone who understands kind of where we're coming from and kind of our creative needs. And so it seemed like a very natural fit.
awesome. Yeah, they do some really great work there as well. I've listened to a couple of their podcasts so far and really enjoy them. So another
No,
one under their belt,
they're
which is
very
great, and I think hopefully it'll become. Sorry, go ahead.
they're quite hands on, which is good, I think, right? Because it is a new show, and look, I think the show will be better after 6 months than the first 3 episodes or whatever. But like, they're going to try to like accelerate that learning curve to a significant degree, I think. And it's appreciated. I mean, I'm kind of used to like being a little bit more of a lone wolf, I think. But like between like having like good production help and good production values on the one hand, and I don't want to get too much into like talking about the contract, but like there's we retain like upside and IP rights, which is like if you're a gambler, you want to have like the upside portion
Mm.
of your bet, basically, right? So it was a very reasonable contract.
So what I was saying is that, obviously because Nate and I are writers, we're both lone wolves and used to working
Mm.
by ourselves. So I think this is a little bit of a departure for both of us. A little bit less for me because I've done some screenwriting where you do collaborate with other people, and this is a little bit more like that. But we're basically, we're creating something together. For for other people to consume in a very different way, and it's a challenge, but it's also really exciting. And I love I love the medium because I do think that there's an immediacy and an intimacy there that you don't always get
Mm.
from writing. And so I'm excited to share that and to kind of explore that dynamic.
Do you have either of you have like a concrete everyday uh, usage of poker skills in your day to day life off of the table? Um, if you know one, that's great, but if not, no
Yeah.
worries.
Oh, I mean, always. It's just it's affected how I just think about decision making. I always am thinking kind of in terms of probabilities and EV, and when I want to say yes or no to an invitation, I always try to put myself in the
Mm,
moment and kind of and do that calculus and see, is this a hand I want to play or
mm,
should I just fold now if I know I'm going to fold it eventually
Yeah,
anyway,
I
and
that's
it's
was
going to put
really
me into
believable.
a really difficult spot on the river.
I was like going out a few weeks ago, right? It was like kind of like a mediocre time. I'm like, it's like basically like the Queen 10 offsuit, right? Of hanging out, right? It's like worth playing. It's worth being here, doing this thing that I'm doing. I don't want to like implicate anybody, right? But it's like it's the Queen 10 offsuit, right? If I had been sick,
Nate, is
no,
this my birthday?
no, Maria, no, that was Ace King suited.
Okay, thank you. So
Yeah, that's
continue.
brilliant.
No, but but like understanding like indifference is like a game theory thing, but like being like, yeah, actually, like probably in this situation, it's a competitive situation. Like either option is probably fine, right? If you go to a restaurant and you're not
Mm,
sure about having the steak or the chicken, in some sense, like game theory dictates that like probably they're equally good, roughly speaking. And you shouldn't like sweat things too much.
mm. Okay, that's a really good one
Yep.
actually. I hadn't thought about
Yeah.
that restaurant. That I might have to use that one because I'm always
Oh no, I
worried
mean
that I'm
it's
ordering the wrong
really
thing.
I think that's great. I think that's really important to kind of keep things in perspective. And I also I also try to be much more precise when I'm telling people, how sure I am of something.
Mm,
I try to give them kind of a confidence interval. And when I even say like whether I'm going to come to something, I'll say, I'm like 75% to come. And
75%. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's a strange answer, but I think people appreciate it.
Well, it's
that's
clear.
critical, I think,
Everyone
for
can
sure, right? Is
understand it,
being like, oh
right?
yeah, I
And
mean,
they,
especially for like playing in the World Series, right, where everything's contingent on like,
Yeah.
survival or elimination from a tournament, right? Like, yeah, conditional X, Y, and Z. I'll meet you for dinner. Otherwise, we'll meet next day. 80%
Mm.
probability we'll make day three of this event, right? So it's yeah, for sure.
Yep. Bringing it back to our podcast, we were doing a recording schedule, and I wrote this very kind of elaborate email to our producers, being like, "Okay, so this schedule is contingent, so on us like not being in a day two. But if we have a restart, this is the time the restarts are. So this is what time we then need to record. This is our hard out, so that we make it to the restart in time." And I was like, "And we should just plan that we're going to be in the restart because it's easier than trying to
Then not.
reschedule everything at 2 a.m. the night before."
Mm.
Anyway, so I had this multi-paragraph email to our producers, and we haven't even launched the podcast yet, but this is what they get for being involved with poker
Yeah.
players.
Yeah. It might end up being a cautionary tale for podcasting producers not to get involved with poker players amidst the World Series. Um, awesome. You guys have been really great. This has been awesome. I maybe wanted to touch on one last thing. You mentioned
Yeah,
a WSOP prop bet.
yeah.
How much can we expect to see out of both of you this summer? Are you going to play a big schedule, or are you,
Yeah.
being more selective?
So I can go first. I am planning to play a pretty full schedule. I'm taking 2 weeks off. And which ends up being a little more than 2 weeks off because I can't play any events that bleed into right
Mm,
the 2 weeks that I'm taking off.
mm,
So I'll be there at the beginning, and I'm going to play the opening event, and maybe one more. Then I'm going to be gone, and then I'll be there basically right up until the main starts. And this is something that I always do for my mindset. I take the week before the main event, the flight that I'm playing off, and get out of Vegas. So
mm.
I'll be going on vacation, and then I'll be coming back to play day 1D of the main, and I'll be there till the end.
Oh, not day
Beautiful.
two this
That's
time. You're
smart.
actually
I think a lot more people should do that.
yeah.
I'm coming back. So Nate knows that I've actually been playing day two for the last few years, but I'm gonna play day 1D.
Mm,
So yeah, my schedule's like a little bit like a bagel or something, right? I'm not going to be there in the middle. I'll be there at the very beginning and probably for the main. So I'll probably there like 3 weeks total, over two stints, I think most likely.
Yeah.
awesome. Amazing.
Yes.
Well, I look forward to sweating the prop bet and watching you both hopefully win a bracelet. That would be amazing. What a
And
great
that'll be good, for the
That would be
podcast.
great.
advertisement for the
That'd be pretty
podcast.
good.
That would be.
Yes,
Yeah.
for the podcast. That's the only
Purely
reason.
for
That's the
the
only reason.
podcast, not for
For
your own
humility.
accomplishments, not
No,
for the
not for
trophy
anything else.
cabinet. No, just for the podcast.
Yep.
Um, this has been really great, guys. Thank you so much for taking the time. If there's anything I didn't touch on that you want people to know about the podcast, feel free to jump in right now.
No, go to the Apple Podcast link and follow it and subscribe.